Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the Short Sports Show. I'm your host, Daniel Short. Today is Monday, December 2nd, 2013, and crazy things are going on in college football world. This is probably most likely just going to be talking about the college football and a little bit about the NFL, what happened this past weekend in sports, and the Bcs Standings and what happened. College football landscape has just shooken up, especially with what's going on for the BCS National Championship. That is going to be a huge topic that we're going to talk about. So we'll go ahead and get straight on into it. We'll talk about some news with some coaching changes all around the country. And then we'll go into some scores. And then finally, the BCS standings that were released last night. So Texas A&M head coach Kevin Sumlin agreed to a 6-year extension. The deal is through 2019, and it is $5 million per year that Texas A&M is going to pay Kevin Sumlin, and this officially, drops or ends the rumors of Kevin Sumlin going to the NFL with possibly, and I saw a report of him going to the Houston Texans, which is not going to happen now, and also anywhere else, whether it was USC or something like that. Finally, this will secure his spot at staying at Texas A&M. Also, Iowa State fired their offensive coordinator, and Wyoming fires their head coach. Florida fired their offensive coordinator as well, and an offensive line coach for Florida. And really, what I want to talk about is about Florida. Now, having a bad year, their offense apparently in the past 3 years has been in the 100 ranks, like where it's been, there's 120 something schools in the FBS, and their total offense has just been 100 in the 100 range, which is not good at all. And I feel like Will Muschamp is putting the blame on those coaches by firing them as if it's their fault. Yes, that is the offensive coordinator and that's the offensive line coach, and they've had some injuries that's happened to them, but over the past few years, you can't just, with the lack of offense that Florida has had, I mean, it's really the head coach. It comes down to him and the players that he's recruited, the coaches that he's put in, and he has the overall say of what happens with this team, and he really hasn't done his job at all. And I'm looking at it, and it looks like he's trying to save himself, and by doing that, that's why he's firing those other coaches. And really, the main problem for Florida, and if they want to get better, both recruiting and football overall, they need to fire Will Muschamp. He needs to be gone. I would do it immediately this week. That way you can find another coach. With all these coaches getting fired and moving around, going different places, coaches getting re-signed, find someone, because now you got to focus on recruiting, especially being the SEC. And Florida State getting better, Miami doing somewhat better. You're having a tougher competition now than it was a few years ago when you could say, hey, look, we had Tim Tebow, we want you to be the next Tim Tebow. Now you don't have that anymore. So Florida really needs to get something going, and they need to fire Will Muschamp. He's the main problem why Florida's been struggling, and really no one's really addressing that. And they're just making the blame on those other coaches. Also, Ohio State head coach Urban Meyer is not going to suspend any players from the fight that happened in Saturday's game versus Michigan. Now, in a rivalry game, that's what it is. It's a rivalry game, and especially with the Ohio State and Michigan, that's a huge game in itself right there. And in the game, there were 3 players, I believe, that were ejected out of the game. 2 from Ohio State, 1 from Michigan, and one of the Ohio State players decided, this is what I'm going to do. I'm already ejected out of the game. Let me go out with a bigger bang. And he flicked off the crowd as he was leaving through to the exit and just flicked off the crowd. Everybody there. And it was caught on camera and everything. And Urban Meyer is not going to do anything about it. He says, whatever's going to happen, I'm going to let the Big Ten officials up there, let them handle it, and that'll be it. I find that that's when you're so desperate that you're hoping nothing happens to those players, so that way not only you can possibly have them in the Big Ten championship, but you'll also have him in a possible national championship if Ohio State beats Michigan State. That's when you know you're so desperate that with this, if this was in the early of the season, or if you knew Ohio State wasn't going to be that good this year, something like that, this guy would have been suspended, for a few amount of games. Now I know there's not a whole lot of games left, but Urban Meyer, I've lost so much respect for you, because you're going to basically let this player go, and your only excuse for not doing anything is just to say, well, I'm going to let the Big Ten deal with it. I'm just going to focus on the game, and whatever happens, happens. That's ridiculous. As a head coach, you shouldn't have. That shouldn't be the way you teach your players, that you're going to get away with it because we got some big games coming up, and we're going to need you. And most likely they're just going to suspend you for maybe a quarter or two, and then you're back with us. It's so stupid. That player should not only be suspended for the Big Ten championship, but one half of whatever bowl game Ohio State plans on going, whether it's the national championship or it's some other, if it's a Rose Bowl or something. That player needs to be suspended not only for the Big Ten championship, but a half of whatever the bowl game is, because that was stupid by him. And for Urban Meyer not to do anything about it, that says a whole lot about his character and what he's teaching his players. That you can just go ahead and do that, and I'm not going to do anything about it. So that was my little rant for that. Also, USC is still looking for a new head coach. Boise State head coach Chris Peterson withdrew from consideration early this morning, and it looks like it's either going to be Washington head coach Steve Sarkisian or Ed Orgeron, who was the interim head coach for right now for USC. It will likely be the new head coach for USC. The reason for Washington head coach, which I don't like him. I don't think he's a good coach at all. He was, I think, 34-29 at UW, his career being there. And I don't know. To me, he's not that good of a coach. I don't like the way his offensive calling is, or his defensive calling. I find it really boring to watch Washington play when he's the head coach, because they've had a lot of great young players at Washington, but always seem to find themselves going 7-5, 8-4, those type of record, and so he's never really pushed them above anything, because he's had good players. That's not a problem. He just can't coach is the problem. And I believe Ed Orgeron is the best pick to go with, even though people don't want him because he doesn't have the flashiest name or whatever it is, or the flashiest record. He knows how to recruit. That is one thing. That guy is a genius at recruiting. Because he did that when he was at Ole Miss. He could recruit players like crazy, except he just didn't have the coaches around him, or just couldn't develop the players enough to be successful as a head coach. But now he's done a good job. He has this team supporting him. So the worst case that USC can do, because they've already lost the team before when Lane Kiffin was there, is to not hire Ed Orgeron, fire him or whatever, let him go and pick Steve Sarkisian, and have these players go, great, we got this coach who really hasn't done anything, and he has to gain our trust, we have to gain his. When we already have a guy that we have their trust, he has our trust, and stuff like that. You understand what I'm saying? So if USC is smart, they pick Ed Orgeron to be the head coach for USC for the next few years, and just go from there. But Washington should also fire Steve Sarkisian, because I don't like him as a head coach at all. So go ahead and go through some scores for the college football. Obviously, the main one. Game of the year for college football, Auburn and Alabama. They go at it. It's the Iron Bowl. Every year is a good game, except for last year when it was a blowout. But other than that, it's usually always a very competitive game. No matter what the records are, what the team has done, it's a very close game. And to be honest with you, I didn't think this game would be that close that it was. Surely I didn't expect Auburn to beat Alabama, and that happened. So Alabama with 1 second remaining, which they kind of fought over. They said there shouldn't be a second left after Yeldon ran out of bounds or something like that. That there shouldn't have been. Either way, it was reviewed. 1 second left, and it all came down to this. And what happened was Alabama, what they should have done, and I'm not just saying this because now we know what the outcome was, but it just makes a whole lot of sense to go with 1 second left, tied game at 28, kneel the ball, go overtime, trust your defense and trust your offense to score and stop Auburn and win the game in overtime. If that's what I would have done. And I'm not saying that because we now know the outcome of what happened. It was a risky thing to even go for a field goal because it was a 50-plus yard field goal. So you risk not only at getting blocked, but also risking what happened. And that was when a player from the end zone, when the field goal was missed, returns it 100-plus yards all the way for a touchdown in literally the last second of the game. The last second of the game. And right there, your national championship hopes dropped to a very, very small, slim percentage now. And that's another thing I'm going to talk about with Alabama national championship. There's about it. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But Nick Saban, we all know he's a good coach, but whoever made the call to go for a field goal with 1 second left, a 50-plus yard field goal, when all you had to do was kneel the ball, go overtime, trust your offense, trust your defense. This is a team that can score. This is a team that can stop teams from scoring, and go out there, win the game in overtime, and just do that. But you decided to go for a field goal and lose the game because of a missed field goal that was returned 100-plus yards for a touchdown. That is not the Nick Saban or whoever called that. I'm pretty sure it's Nick Saban. Whoever called that was a very bad decision. And again, I'm not saying that because of the outcome. I'm pretty sure about 90% of America that was watching that game knew Alabama should have not gone for the field goal and should have just kneeled the ball, go overtime. I mean, to me, that just makes the most sense. But apparently at that time, and apparently in another game also I'll talk about with the Ohio State-Michigan game, going for it was the theme of the day or something because, and it backfired for both teams, for Alabama and Michigan. Anyways, Auburn wins the game 34-28 off a missed field goal with 1 second remaining. Takes it all the way back. Touchdown. Game over. Auburn's chances of national championships go up. Alabama's drop just like that, literally in 1 second. It's incredible that happened. Also, Florida State dominates Florida 37-7. And now talking about Michigan and Ohio State. Michigan blew it. They blew it. They've already had a bad year. And to keep a game close against Ohio State, which I believe Ohio State is just like Baylor. They're not a good team. They haven't played anybody. And then when they played someone that was difficult or kind of difficult, they struggle and they show their true what the team really is. And that's what happened. Michigan, not the best team, but they have some good players and they can win games. Things just didn't go their way. And they scored a touchdown with a few seconds remaining, and they decided, apparently it wasn't Brady Hoke's decision. He asked the seniors, what do you want to do? At 42-41 score, do you want to go for the extra point and force this game to go to overtime, or do you want to go for two and possibly win this game right here, right now, but you also risk losing, and that's it, and you lost by a point against the number 3 team and your biggest rival, Ohio State. What are you going to do? Apparently the seniors all agreed, let's go for two. And this is where, I don't know. That's more of a decision where I could see why you go for it and why you don't. Because your defense is not going to most likely is not going to stop Ohio State, and Ohio State defense can stop Michigan. So I could see why you went for two. But to be honest with you, it's another thing of you're already right there. Why not just go for overtime? I mean, I understand you take a risk in games, but you're going against your biggest rival, and now you got to know the possible outcome of that. You could lose this game by 1 point because you decided to go for two. And to since they did go for 2, I think it should have been a better play call. That was terrible. It was bad play call all around for offense for Michigan. And then it was just a terrible throw. He threw in like triple coverage. Devin Gardner throws in triple coverage. It's picked off. Game over. And Michigan loses to Ohio State, and Ohio State somehow still remains undefeated and moves on to the Big Ten Championship, where they'll play Michigan State. And talk about that as well. South Carolina just manhandled Clemson 31-17, and I've lost so much faith in Taj Boyd. He was my quarterback to go to. I was hoping he'd be the number 1 pick overall. Hopefully wins the Heisman, leads Clemson to maybe even the national championship, and all things go good from there. And that didn't happen. Not in just the entire season. That's not how it happened. Mizzou holds on versus Texas A&M 28-21 and advances to the SEC championship versus Auburn. And you know what's funny is with Missouri and A&M jumping to the SEC, everybody really predicted they would both struggle, or A&M was going to have the upper hand because they just had more success than Missouri did in the Big 12 for the past few years that they were in, the last few years that they were in it. And, you know, A&M, their first year in the SEC, Johnny Manziel's the big story, freshman Heisman, and Mizzou has struggles that year. I think they go below 500, and A&M's a big story. They're the big success. They made the right decision. Missouri, you're questionable. Second year in the SEC, we already knew what to expect from A&M. We knew they were going to be pretty solid, and they were, except defensively. And then Missouri, on the other hand, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't think they were going to be that good. We maybe knew they would be a little bit past 500, but obviously I don't think really anybody could predict Missouri was going to be in the SEC championship game. So that happens. And then, so what my whole point was going to was Missouri reaches the SEC championship before Texas A&M does. That is something I don't think anybody predicted. Even a diehard fan probably wished that was going to happen, but I'm pretty sure they looked and were thinking we're not going to get there before A&M does, especially how A&M was recruiting and how everything was going for Texas A&M. I'm pretty sure that was not their thinking, but yeah, Missouri does. Goes to the SEC championship next week. Stanford keeps it close with Notre Dame. Final score is 27-20. What else? Michigan State holds on against Minnesota and will play Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. And that's one more thing I wanted to talk about. Michigan State is the real deal, and I'll talk more about it on Friday. I wasn't going to talk about it today, but I realized I still have Friday's episode when the games are about to happen the day before, day after. So I'll save that talk for Friday's episode. Michigan State is the real deal. They're now number 10 in the BCS standings, which we're about to get to. And Michigan State, I believe in you. I believe in Michigan State, and I think a lot of people need to start focusing and looking at Michigan State and seeing what their defense is all about, because that is the real deal right there for Michigan State. Baylor. I was not gonna have this episode without talking about Baylor and my TCU Horned Frogs and what happened in that game. Final score is 41-38, and a game that should not happen, and it seems like that game resembled everything of how TCU's season has gone. Again, me being a huge TCU fan, I'm going to be unbiased right now, and I hope people that are listening, I hope you believe me and what I'm about to say. And if I can understand where people say, "Oh no, you're just saying it because you're a huge fan, and then you're just a sore loser," blah, blah, blah. No. Check this out. This is why. TCU has 3 turnovers, 2 of them pick 6. Right then and there, 2 interceptions, pick 6. You take both of those away, that's 2 touchdowns. Take away 2 touchdowns from 41. Then we fumble on our own 1-yard line, and Baylor recovers, then later scores a touchdown. So take away 3 touchdowns, 21 points, take away 41. Right there, it's 20-38. TCU wins the game if those 3 mistakes don't happen. Guarantee. Even if TCU doesn't even score later on those drives. If we scored on those drives, that's 21 plus 38. What is that? That's 59-20. TCU could win that game. 59-20 against the number 9 team in the nation, Baylor, that everybody thought, oh, this is the team that's going to do it. They have the best offense. They're better than Oregon and this and that. And TCU wins. But those 3 mistakes cost TCU the victory. And I know that was TCU's fault. They fumbled when the running back took the ball. No one even touched him other than his offensive lineman. The ball fell out, and Baylor recovers. Then Casey Ballhall makes 2 bad reads. He did throw 3 interceptions, which was in the last play of the game. Tipped up and then intercepted in the end zone. When we should have just gone for a field. And that's another thing. TCU's, whoever called to go for it, when we should have just kicked a 40-plus yard field goal, when our kicker can kick a 56-yard field goal, which he did against K-State on the road and made it. And so that shows you don't have any faith in your kicker now. We could have just gone for the field goal. If those 3 mistakes did happen, we could go for the field goal, tie the game, go overtime. We stopped Baylor. We did it multiple times. We held them basically to 20 points. I know the final score is 41-38, but we held them to 20 points because you take away those 3 defensive touchdowns, and that's it. And basically, since we can't go back and take that away, what we can look at is that TCU held Baylor to 300 and something yards, the lowest Baylor has been held on offense the entire year. The entire year, TCU's defense, a team that's now 4-8 and finishes the year 4-8, holds Baylor, number 9 in the nation. Everybody gives them the best praise on their offense, and we held them to the lowest amount of yards and lowest amount of offensive points this entire year. Just saying. So that's my little rant. That's what happened. If you don't believe me, go watch the game. Guarantee you'll agree. I'm not saying I'm right about everything. No, I'm just talking about just that game. Baylor got lucky. Now that's probably being a little bit sore loser, but TCU did make the mistakes. But you take those away, game's over. Or we go for if we go for the field goal and don't try to go for a touchdown, go for a field goal, go overtime, then anything can happen from there. And I would believe that TCU could still get the victory because our defense was locked down on them. People don't think that because they say, oh, Baylor scored 41. That's about right. Well, 2 of those were 2 pick six and then a fumble on the 1 yard line. Of course, anybody's going to score right there. So that's about it. I hate Baylor. I'm sorry. Penn State defeats Wisconsin 31-24. And finally, I like Penn State, so I'm glad they got the victory. So let's go ahead and talk about the BCS standings for Week 15. And because of some losses for can't talk, Alabama and a few other teams, here is your top 10. Florida State at number 1, Ohio State at number 2, 3 is Auburn, 4 is Alabama, 5 is Missouri. Then number 6, Oklahoma State, 7 Stanford, 8 South Carolina, 9 Baylor, and 10 Michigan State. 11 through 15 is Arizona State, Arizona State at 11, Oregon at 12, Clemson, Northern Illinois, and LSU. And the rest are just kind of just teams that are just there, not really anybody cares about. And then one thing I wanted to talk about is the BCS National Championship talk. Now, some people believe that with Alabama losing to Auburn, their national championship hopes are completely gone. And let me tell you, that is false. That is all false. If Missouri defeats Auburn, Auburn's out and that's it. They're not going to the national championship. If Michigan State defeats Ohio State, then Ohio State is out. Alabama, even though they're off now, can move up to number 2 just like that. I guarantee you they will jump Missouri even if Missouri beats Auburn. I believe Alabama, and that's a I know argument sounds bad, like a mean thing, but or it's a discussion in itself right there. Who gets it, Missouri or Alabama? Both teams would then have one loss, but one has the SEC championship crown, and one has the history of what they've done the past few years. I could see Alabama still jumping Missouri, taking the number 2 spot. That's and with Florida State beating Duke in the ACC championship, and we could still be looking at a Florida State Alabama game, just like that. So people believe just because Auburn beats Alabama that it's completely over for Alabama. Their chances dropped greatly because of that, obviously, but they're still that one-loss team. And they still have that history behind them and what they've done throughout the season. They still beat A&M. That's a solid win for them on the road. They have other victories that were pretty solid. So don't think Alabama's just out of it. Now, should they be? Probably. But things could still go their way. It's going to be a lot, but it could still happen. So I just want to make sure people do realize that. But yes, it is a long shot for that happening. So let's go ahead. That's in for college football. We'll talk more of college football on Friday's episode again. But let's go ahead and talk about the NFL, what happened. And we got a big game tonight, and we're actually running out of time, so I got to make sure I get all this done. The Bengals hold off the San Diego Chargers 17-10. Very sad news. San Diego's season is basically over with now at 5-7. Wild card chances are really dropping, and with Chiefs and Broncos, that's not helping. Broncos now number 1, Chiefs at that 5th spot. You only have one team left, with other teams, gaining some victories over the Chargers. And some tiebreakers. Basically, Charger season's over, which sucks. But couldn't say it wasn't that. I mean, it was an okay year. I mean, we should have had some wins that should have gone our way, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. Didn't happen. Jaguars get the victory over the Browns, 32-28, and somehow Jaguars are gaining some momentum. Titans lose to the Colts, 22-14. Bears and Vikings go overtime, and Adrian Peterson has a heck of a game. 35 carries, 211 yards, no touchdowns, but does help helps the Vikings get the victory over the Bears in overtime, 23-20. Dolphins and the Jets go at it, and now we have Sims. Is it Chris Sims? Oh, man, that's terrible if that's your starting quarterback for the Jets. Final score, Dolphins 23, Jets 3. Eagles dominating once again. Not in this game, they didn't really dominate, but Nick Foles, 19 touchdowns to 0 interceptions since his last interception. That's incredible. Eagles get the victory 24-21, and I think I got to remind myself, but I want to have a little talk about the Eagles, and so from what I said in the beginning of the season, saying they're only going to win about 2 or 3, 4 games, to now they now have 7 games, and I'm going to talk about that to clear it up a little bit. But yeah, they have been better than my expectations. Panthers get the victory over the Buccaneers, 27-6. Patriots hold on against the Texans, 34-21. Falcons go overtime with the Bills and get the victory, 34-31. And 49ers hold off the Rams, 23-13. Broncos get the victory over the Kansas City Chiefs, 35-28, with Peyton Manning going for 403 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4 of those touchdowns going to Eric Decker, who had one heck of a game with 174 yards and 4 touchdowns. Also, the Giants get the victory over the Redskins after being down 14. No, they weren't. They were tied at 14. Either way, they got the victory, 24-17. Giants now 5-7, still trying to find their way into the playoff race. Now tonight's game. Oh wow, we only have 40 seconds left. Great. Tonight's game, Saints Seahawks, gonna be a great game. I think the Saints do get the victory. 35-24 is my prediction. I think I said that in last week's, but just want to clear it up. That's going to be a really heck of a game. I hope it snows here in Seattle. We're supposed to get snow. I kind of doubt it, but just hoping up here that it does, especially for that game tonight. Also, some baseball news. Yankees and Robinson Cano are $80 million apart from a new deal. Minnesota Twins signed Phil Hughes to a 3-year, $24 million deal. And Pirates acquire catcher Chris Stewart from the Yankees to a player to be named. That is the end of my show, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you follow on Spreaker.com and subscribe on YouTube. I will see you guys this Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you guys for listening. See you guys then.